on passion-driven statistics. My name is Kristen Flaming. With me, I have Jane, Bonnie, and Jason. All of us are partners on the Passion-Driven Statistics NSF-funded grant for this approach to teaching introductory statistics. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the model, and then we're going to share our experiences, hopefully answer some of your questions along the way. So, passion-driven statistics is a model that is focused on giving students a practical real-world experience with real data, solving problems, answering questions that are driven by their passion, by their interest in the classroom. So the students set the topic. We tend to give them a large database of, that we have decided is a good one for them based on the interest of the students. And so it could be a psychological database, it could be a sports-related database, it could be a health database. The goal is for it to be real data that has a lot of variables and a lot of questions that they could potentially ask of this data set. The course is a flipped classroom approach. So in the classroom, we're typically working through their project from the start of the semester through the end, going through different topics that are related to their statistics course. For like an introductory statistics course, we're talking like descriptive and inferential statistics, and some work all the multivariate statistics. In other classrooms, like in a graduate classroom or in a high school classroom setting, of course, those topics are going to be adjusted. This course is very flexible. So what's nice about this model is it works for any level of student, and it doesn't matter what software you're using, what textbook, if you're going to use one beyond what we provide in terms of resources. So it's very flexible. Outside of the classroom, the students are watching a lecture typically. We have pre-recorded lecture videos that are content-based, very need to know, only what is really important for that topic for students to understand. We have a lot of one-on-one support in the classroom with it being flipped. So we're constantly in this conversation with students about what their topic is, what their research question is, and what specific analysis we're working on for that week, and how their data is telling a story through this project. Because it's very flexible, students can somewhat self-pace and kind of adjust their needs based on how they're doing and reach out for more support through the instructors or other classroom classmates, or it could be through the resources that we're providing through the textbook or videos or, what instructors would put online. So some, just benefits about this flipped classroom approach to teaching statistics using real world data and exposing students to where they're thinking critically about their data, answering questions that are important to them. It's a very a multidisciplinary approach. So I have a lot of different majors in one classroom typically. It's not just discipline specific. It can be, but because of this approach is very flexible and open and takes an interdisciplinary approach, you can have a lot of different majors in one classroom, and it works well. It's very flexible in terms of the type of data set, the type of software. For example, we have resources for SAS, SPSS, Stata, R, Python, and then like even Excel could be used. Really any data set, as long as the instructor has experience with it or is willing to use resources to develop their skill to then help the student through that learning process. It encourages a very flexible application of this knowledge. So it's not going to be the same experience for every student, that their data and their research question kind of drives their path through the course. And so of course, for some students, working with some analyses won't make sense based on their research question and their data. So we're providing a lot of one-on-one support for these students at their typical skill level. And it just allows for very approachable course for the students. They feel very welcome. They feel like we're meeting them at their needs and that we're going through the course with something that's very much of interest to them. So this is what a typical kind of semester would look like in, like, say, a course like mine for introductory statistics. Now, again, this is a very flexible approach. So for example, like a 16-week semester is what I'm teaching, and it kind of shows you throughout the semester what aspect of the typical project or poster we're working on. And then at the end of the semester, the students do develop this poster and present it. That's the big culminating experience, is some sort of presentation of their work, whether it's in class, through a paper, or what we like the most to do, if it's possible, is to do a research type symposium where all the students are presenting their posters either virtually or in person, so that way they can get that experience, and it really brings it full circle for them. Compared to a traditional introductory statistics course, our research has showed that the project-based course typically enrolls significantly more female students and students with a significantly lower math SAT score compared to like an introductory computer programming course. We see higher rates of underrepresented minorities, so that students are choosing the project-based course over a traditionally introductory statistics course, we find. So it's attracting students that are otherwise would not take statistics course, or that they would be much less successful. And we find that these students are tending to be more interested in follow-up courses after taking this project-based course versus a traditional introductory statistics course. So for the traditional statistics course students, only about 26% of the students were reporting they wanted additional courses, where with the project-based, we were seeing about 42% of students reporting that. More than half of the students enrolling in the project-based course reported receiving more individualized support compared to any other course that they had taken at their university. And about 44% of them felt that the individualized support was more useful than any type of one-on-one support they had received in the course. Our students at regional universities reported being more likely to have learned more from their project-based course than in any other course they had taken in their degree plan or in minor courses. We find that many underrepresented minority students consider the material on average to be more difficult than the underrepresented minority students enrolled in the project-based course. But what's interesting is those underrepresented minority students demonstrated a similar level of increased confidence in applied skills and interest in follow-up courses. We have a Schoology account where we share everything that we can imagine that instructor would want. So we have a very turnkey approach if that's what you're looking for, or we have resources that you can pick and choose from and say, this is what I want to do. With other instructors that have a very applied project-based course already, but just are looking for additional data sets and maybe a few additional resources, and that they want to tie it together to where they're using one data set throughout the entire semester. And then we have students that are just doing it for 2 weeks at the end of a content-based course to kind of add a project that brings in data to help answer about their content-based course. So it's very flexible. There's a lot of resources. All of them are freely available, as well as we provide one-on-one support where, like myself as a partner that's been doing this a long time, will help guide you through that adaptation process. Jane, I was going to let you share first, maybe just, who your students are, where you're teaching at, just, a few minutes about your course.
Sure. I teach at Clarkson University, which is located in upstate New York, and I teach on the Schenectady, New York campus. We are a professional programs campus, so we have MBA programs, master's degrees in engineering, bioethics, education. And what we have in the MBA program, that's where I teach, we have one course. It's on a quarter-based system, so it's a 10-week course, and it's required. And it's not one of the favorite courses, I have to say, in the MBA curriculum. It's viewed as one of the hardest courses in our curriculum. And so the approach that we take is to give them practical skills to take into the business world. The other thing about the course is we also get people to take it as electives from the bioethics program or from the engineering school. So I have a broad range with MBAs as it is, but add on top of that people from other programs to take it as an elective. So this works out great, and it aligns with principles of adult learning, where choice is an important thing. So for them to pick the problem that they want to work on is very engaging for adults. And my adults range the gamut. I have some that come as juniors and senior undergraduates from a direct entry to med school program. And then I have all the way up to working professionals in a variety of disciplines. So this is really great to get them through that life cycle of how do you formulate a problem, collect the data, analyze it, and then interpret it in the context of solving a real world problem.
I teach at Perry High School. It's about 30 miles east of Cleveland. We're a smaller school. We have 9 through 12, about 600 students. I teach the Introductory Statistics course with this program, and it's made up of 10th through 12th graders. Half of those are the seniors, and it's just a different format for our kids to explore that research question throughout, unlike any other math class they took. So it's really providing a different opportunity for them to show some strength in mathematics. We are focusing on that SAS programming, so I'm finding a different success with each kid as they're engaging with this program. And that's where we're sitting right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jason, would you share for us?
Hi, yes, I'm at Muskegon University, which is a small liberal arts college. We're in Southeast Ohio. It's a very rural area. And so far, I've used this method across 3 different courses I've been asked to develop. The first course was a online non-traditional students nursing course. So these were students who already had a nursing degree who then wanted to work towards a bachelor's degree. And this really helped with a lot of flexibility with their schedules because they were already working students with the flipped classroom, being able to pick their own projects, allow them to tie projects to their current jobs and pick data sets that were highly of interest to them. Then based upon the success of this course, I was asked to develop a introductory stats course, a level 100 course for just the general undergraduate population, particularly students who were struggling with math courses. So these were lower SAT students. And so we developed a sports analytics course, trying to find a subject that would interest a lot of students. And so for the last couple of years, I've been teaching that course, and it's been highly successful with this model. The students, particularly these lower ACT scoring students, really want the help in the classroom. They really enjoy the help, and it really motivates them to work by having me and I also have TAs who come around and help each one individually. Based upon the success of those 2 courses, the nursing program decided they wanted a nursing stats course for their traditional undergrads. And so starting this last year, I offered a level 200 course to the traditional nursing students, which is a very different population. These are more academically, they have higher academic achievement levels to be in the nursing program. But again, the very same format highly motivates them. Being able to pick their own projects out of the ad health data set allows them to really want to work on the projects, really learn the materials. And then unlike most of the people in this NSF partnership, I actually use Excel for all 3 of my courses. And that's about where we're at right now.
Thank you. Jane, and would you share what software you use?
Sure, I forgot to mention that. We use Jump software, and I also would like to add, we teach the intro class both in a classroom setting when we're in a non-pandemic situation, and we also teach it under normal circumstances as an online asynchronous course as well. So we use this method in both of those settings.
Great, thank you. And Bonnie, what software are you guys using?
We are using SAS.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, I'll share a little bit about my experience. So I traditionally have taught at a regional university in a psychology department where I was teaching psychology students, nursing students, and then as students started hearing about my course and the experience, I got a lot of biology, pre-med, pre-chemistry students because I learned that when they had to go do their capstone course, that my course really helped a lot with. I have taught it online, synchronously and asynchronously, so like via via Zoom even before the pandemic and also while the pandemic. And then I've taught it face-to-face. It works really well. You need a computer lab, or every student needs to have a laptop or access of some sort. From your perspective, as you know, listening to this panel, why are you looking for maybe a different approach to teaching statistics? I'd like you to just take about 30 seconds and really think about what are you looking for in an approach to teaching statistics, and what doesn't work currently for your current approach. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a minute to think about. If not, of course, you could pause the recording. So Jason, would you mind sharing?
So one of the things we were looking for, particularly here at Muskingum University, is an approach that decreases a lot of the anxiety that students had around statistics, particularly around the math component of stats. And so an applied approach, particularly a project-based approach, seemed to be the answer to that. And it has worked dramatically since then. We've had multiple students rave about how one of the great responses I always get at the end of the semester, this was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And they actually see it where it applies to other work that they do. So like the sports stats course, while we're only focused on sports, I get students who are business majors who are now coming in because they're like, this is hands-on learning of skill sets that we can take back to our major and use it in our major. And so we're trying to find a teaching course design that would, emphasize that. And passion-driven statistics does an amazing job of doing that for our students.
Okay, great. Jane, is there?
So one thing that we focus on is we focus on the whole life cycle of problem solving. So this is a good way to do that, and it gives continuity, just like a problem you'd encounter in the business world. You don't have a series of chapters in a problem that you go to the end of the book and end of that chapter and know what to apply. So it makes them think about what are the right methods to choose. So it simulates what they'd see in the real environment rather than the traditional textbook kind of serial approach or linear approach to it. That's one thing. The other thing that I think it really helps in the online setting is for having either the asynchronous or synchronous interaction. So when the students, if they're all, how do you get them to present if they're all doing the same homework assignment? It's boring. But here they see different problems, and because we have such a heterogeneous classroom, we may have someone in healthcare who's a physician or a nurse who then can give comment about the subject matter to one of our undergraduates, for example. And so that really helps with understanding how you work with colleagues on an interdisciplinary team, and it helps them to understand the importance of subject matter experts and expertise in the context of solving a problem in the real world.
Well, I approached teaching statistics. This would be my third semester, and I started out with a book. And that was miserable for me. It's the fourth math credit for our kids. And so most kids for that population, it's their last math credit. And with that, trying to get them engaged for that book and that answer. So that was just very frustrating to me. I met with some representatives and statisticians from some of our local companies in our area. And we sat down and looked for some internships for some of our students. And they asked us, what software are you teaching your students? What application? They actually wanted to know what we were doing in our school. And I'm like, the other math teacher said, well, we're using PI-84s. And they just rolled their eyes at us. And so we went out to research that. And I told my principal to please go check out passion-driven statistics. And I was hooked right away, did it last semester and then this semester. So I'm seeing a whole different engagement, especially with those reluctant learners. It really is, they know they're learning something that is out there in the real world, they'll come in and tell me, my mom works with this every night. And so they're bringing in it from home, connecting to the real world just with that SAS piece right away.
I teach at a university that has very traditional undergraduate students. They're commuters. They are paying for, the courses themselves. They're working full time. They're coming from mostly smaller schools in terms of their K through 12 experience. They have very poor student skills, and it's not because they don't try. It's typically they just don't know any better, right? They're like, what do you mean I'm supposed to read the textbook like before class, or I'm supposed to take notes during lecture? Like they have horrible student skills. And so I was looking for something that could meet my students where they are at, meetings, just struggling to be a good student. And then also that, trying to captivate them and interest them. Anything that I find interest in, I'm like willing to dig into. So, trying to find something that was really engaging. And I didn't want to be bored, right? Like the traditional, like Bonnie said, it's boring to do the same generic problem set over and over and over. I've taught this so many semesters to, I think over 500 students at this point. And I've never had the same students do the same project in the exact same way, right? They ask maybe similar research questions, but they focus on a different component. So cheating doesn't happen. Like I never have to worry about our students cheating, because for one, they figure out it's more work. Two, they're like, I can't fake it in class that I'm doing the work and then pulling up somebody else's after, because in the classroom setting, we are actively working on their project. So like, for example, the way I approach is I, do a few steps, talk about a few things and do my own example. And then I have them do a couple of steps for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm working around the room with my teaching assistants. If you have them, you don't have to have them, but it works well if you do. Helping my classmates or my students. And then I go and do the next couple of steps, like now we're going to do the analyses part and talk about the first thing that we're going to interpret in the output. And then they do that. And so it's a back and forth of me demonstrating and them working in their projects. And so a cheating aspect is just not something I've ever had a concern for. So take a few minutes or 30 seconds and think about the benefits and challenges of your current approach to teaching statistics or maybe research methods for you and for your students.
I think the benefit starts out first with that a lot of my population I had as freshmen in Algebra 1. Those were not successful days for them. They were not strong math students. They weren't strong students. And to watch that student be able to step into and become independent with that programming and that problem solving and showing up every day of school, that's even a big one at that high school level, to know that they need to keep the pace and be there every day. So that would be the biggest benefit, is to watch them start to believe in themselves, to be able to get that project done, and then to watch them start to ask me questions. I was always getting stuff out of them. Now they're coming at me. I got it all the way to here, and why is my graph not there? Well, where do we go? Go look to see if your output data is there. And they start to go that way. Another thing that became a challenge for me was to pace myself, or a challenge of this was pace myself around the room. Last semester with the COVID, we have small classrooms. This semester, I have a little bit larger. I've had to pace myself to try to get to everybody so that they don't get in that downtime. Well, there comes a benefit. Other students started helping other students. And it wasn't the cheating. It was, oh, that's the problem I had. You need to go this way. So they actually learn it a little deeper by becoming my little aides in the classroom. And they start this. And I would never predicted who's become strong. They've just found their own little world now of success, which is perfect at their senior year, that I get to watch them start to make some different decisions now on their career path.
There's some challenges in the fact that many of my students have very limited technology exposure when they walk into the classroom, but it's amazing at the end of the classroom to walk by and see their Excel spreadsheet and all the commands that they have, functions they have typed in, and them seeing them help each other. And probably one of the greatest benefits is to see that development of that analytical skills throughout the semester. To see them looking at me confused at the beginning of the semester, and then by the end of the semester, just seeing them take a brand new question or a brand new problem and taking their different approaches to try to solve it on their own before they ask for help. In some cases, by the end of the semester, many of them don't need the help anymore. I actually find that by the time I get towards the end of the semester, the amount of hands I have being raised dramatically decreases as the semester goes. So that's an amazing benefit and an amazing experience to watch and see.
Yeah, I've had a lot of students that, especially after they go on and take another course, they come back and they say, like, I was in a classroom taking a research course in my major with students that didn't have your course. And I realized how much even more so I learned from this course. And every time we would talk about a different type of analyses, or we were reading a research article, either for our project or for a class assignment, like I could relate it back to my project in some way. Something about it. Somehow I could connect a little bit to it so I could understand that a little bit more. And where I would, talk about my project in relation to these examples with my classmates when we were studying, they had no context because they, were not in a project-based course. And
sure, my students are challenged at the front end where they have to do the data management, where they have to deal with a coded large data set. And I think it's important for managers, they're future managers is what they're studying to be. And I realize that many of them will never analyze data once they leave my classroom. But what they do walk away with from this method is an appreciation, because they may supervise analysts. And when an analyst comes to them and says, I need 2 weeks to clean up the data in the project plan, now these some of them are currently managers and some are going to be managers. Have a better appreciation of the analytic life cycle and what's required to bring a problem and an analysis to a conclusion and to have actionable information to bring to a business decision. So they get the appreciation for what has to be done, even though they may never do it again.
Like just perceived challenges I had of coming towards this model, because I had known SPSS. I started using SAS because, for one, I wanted the coding experience for my students, which I know a lot of instructors are very apprehensive about teaching their students coding. We do a lot of copy paste, and then they do a little bit of changing. A perceived challenge I thought when I started approaching this was the software. Can I learn it? Can I teach it? Our lecture-based software videos that we do have show the steps, and that's what I did. I literally watched the SAS videos and I learned and taught myself SAS. I really thought it was going to be a challenge to not know the data set. Some instructors offer up multiple data sets. I encourage only offering one until you kind of get the model down. But for example, the one I use has like 2,300 variables and almost 6,000 participants. And it's like, that's a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, students are going to ask me questions and I'm going to know nothing about this data set. Well, I got a general grasp of it, but they liked that they knew a little bit more than me, right? And I'm like, and I got to sit down next to them and say, I know nothing about these two topics. What have you learned? What is your literature review telling you about these topics? And okay, what variables do we have in the data set that relate to this research question? And so they were teaching me, which is, if you can teach what you're learning about, you learn it at a deeper level. I was really concerned that I was going to be like, I don't know what we're going to do today, or I don't know what students are going to ask me. But it just is a natural conversation. You've worked with data, you've done some research, and as you do a project, like the questions are going to come up in your head that the students are going to ask.
Going online, one of the biggest problems is the students who are struggling, who are not naturally willing to ask questions, they're much easier to fall through the cracks. Where if you're in the classroom and you're walking around the classroom stopping at each person, looking at their project, it's much harder for that to happen. And then, many of my students are lower income students. So as soon as we went online, they went home and they found jobs. And that combined with technology issues made it problematic. I mean, some of the advantages of this is that the classroom is already flipped. So you already have the videos, you already have lectures already set to go online. And then we used Microsoft, we used Microsoft Teams, which then allowed me to meet with students over video, share screens, and try to help. So it was a quick adjustment, but it is a possible adjustment. And once you make the adjustment, it does run much smoother than many of the online formats that I've seen in other places.
I try to encourage them by using an online forum that they can ask questions of the class. So maybe another student has had a similar problem and get them to do that to get some help. And that's what they'll have to do in the real world anyway. They won't have a professor to come to. They will have to talk to tech support or colleagues. I encourage them, if they're having issues, to call tech support if they've tried. I give them a little bit of a plan for how to go about getting help. You know, first go and use knowledge bases. If that doesn't help you, reach out to either myself or someone in the class, or someone else you might know, a classmate who might have taken this class before. And then if all else fails, you can make a call to tech support, because that's what you do in the real world. You don't want to spend forever trying to solve your problem when you're paying for tech support. So you should take advantage of that resource that your company has purchased.
I have partners that do this in pairs, and I offer that to my students, no matter if it's face-to-face or online. That does help, especially in an online environment, putting them in their own little groups, because those students that aren't going to ask, maybe they have a classmate that's their partner, or like that identifies, okay, we do need help, and they're more likely to come together and ask for help versus just one. And then I really like the online component of I will force them to get into Zoom and work through their project and send me the recording of it, or in some version of that. And so I can kind of, if it's a asynchronous course, I can see what they're doing, and I can kind of identify early on, like, oh, that's a big issue, we need to talk about this. Or I can send them a video, a screencast of my computer, and, you know, fixing a few things. Is a very applicable real world experience that I think there are a few challenges, but the benefits extremely outweigh those challenges. And so, you know, if you're considering this model, or want to learn more about our resources, or have an interest in talking one-on-one with me to, you know, learn about our resources, to gain access, to ask questions, or if you're like, you had me at hello, let's go, which was the kind of partner I was, and some of us are, and where it's like, I'm turnkey and I'm going full steam ahead, let's do it. And then we have other partners that like, okay, well, I'm going to adapt just one topic to a project and flip that part, and they kind of just gradually add to it or develop it. I'm happy to talk about all that. That's my role with the grant. I want to thank Bonnie, Jason, and Jane for sharing their experiences with everybody today. I hope that it was a beneficial experience for you, and we want to thank you for your time.